Welcome to today's Ealing election hustings. I'm really pleased that we've got some colleagues here from around the borough, and we're expecting other residents and colleagues from the Southall area to join us soon. I gather there's some very difficult traffic outside, which is probably delaying people, but nonetheless we advertised a 7 o'clock start, so I'd like to start on time. As a courtesy to all of our panel, who have fantastically all arrived early today. That's a big relief. By way of introduction, my name's Janpal Bazran, and I work for Southall Community Alliance, and we've worked with colleagues from another borough-wide organisation called Ealing Community Network to arrange today's Hustings event. I'll introduce the panel in a moment, but just in terms of general housekeeping, we're not expecting any fire alarms or fire drills, so if there is a fire alarm, exits are over there, and we meet outside the front, and the loos and conveniences are through the doors and to your right. In terms of background, I must admit, a few years ago the word hustings was alien to my vocabulary. I had no idea what hustings were, and I think a lot of people don't. They understand sort of televised debates between political leaders, and I suppose if we do have a camera here, we have something like that going today, but it's actually a really important part of our local democracy. I think that our candidates, whether it's a local election or a general election, have the opportunity to present their case, but equally to be asked questions from members of the public about their policies, what they're planning, indeed about their experience. I think that's a really healthy thing. And part of today's hustings was really driven by a debate which is taking place within the local community and voluntary sector, where local groups are, in some cases, facing real anxiety about the future and the funding which they receive to deliver services to local residents. And the request was, Janpal, could we arrange an opportunity to talk to our councillors and also other representatives of parties to see what they say about this situation, and indeed just to hear about their general policies overall. So that's the background to today. In terms of the agenda or programme, it's very simple. Once I've stopped talking, I will pass over one by one to my colleagues on the left. Each of the candidates will have 5 minutes to talk about themselves or their party. We will keep a strict count of time. Then we will have a question and answer session which everyone can participate in. And as we start that, I'll just lay down some ground rules. And finally, once the question and answer session is finished, which should be approximately about an hour, we'll have a short final summing up from each of the candidates, 2 minutes each. So I hope that's clear. Without further ado, if I can introduce our panel and say that in true Southall fashion, we've had a dramatic late entry. So I guess I better start with him. So immediately to my left is Peter Ward, who represents the Renew Party. Peter approached us literally as we were walking into to set up. And having spoken to the other candidates, they're all happy for him to join the panel. To Peter's left, we have Councillor Gary Malcolm from the Lib Dems. In the centre with a splendid green tie, we've got Jeremy Parker from, obviously, the Green Party. To his left, Councillor Gregory Stafford from the Conservatives. And then finally, hidden away at the end, Councillor Julian Bell, who of course is the Labour leader of Ealing Council. So what I will do now is, in geographical order, I will pass over to Peter first. 5 minutes each. Babby, keeping time. And Peter, over to you.
Hi. Can you all hear me? No? Is this working? Hi. Hi. Good start, isn't it?
Right.
Okay. Is that better?
Yes.
Is that better? Okay, that's great. Thanks very much. Firstly, thank you very much for having me very much at the last minute. I would say I did email you this morning asking to come. Right, okay. Who are we? Renew. There's a huge disaster that is going to take place next year. It's got one word. We all know what it is. Brexit. The government, frankly, is divided and doesn't know what it's doing. All the political parties are either divided, or if they are against Brexit, they say we will have another referendum. Brexit has already divided this country. Referendums are bad ways and expensive ways of making terrible decisions. This will be an economic catastrophe, and what I really do fear is what will happen then for all the people with their dashed hopes who thought Brexit was going to save us all, Brexit was going to be wonderful. That is not going to happen. Renew is a new political party that at its core is committed to stopping Brexit. It started just after summer last year. It now has over 5,000 supporters. It is growing. It has got its first councillor in Wandsworth, and I will be standing for the council in a few weeks' time in Elthorne. We do anticipate doing well in the elections, simply because, as I've been knocking on doors, and others have, when we say that we are committed to stopping Brexit, people tend to say, right, we'll vote for you. Now, if you disagree with me, if you think Brexit was great, that's fine. We'll shake hands. I'm told, what about the will of the people? I just give you one thought. We know for a fact that it was mostly, I'm not saying this to be disrespectful, but it was mostly elderly people who voted Brexit, and it was younger people who voted Remain. If 16 and 17-year-olds could have voted, then the result would have been different. And I, for one, do not have the slightest doubt that if there was another referendum tomorrow, the result would go the other way for that reason, even if you disregard all the uncertainty. So the Renew ticket is a very simple one. Stop Brexit. Now, just about me personally, I stood for the Greens last year. I've lived in Southall since 1986. I am a barrister. Human rights is my speciality. And I've got interests in housing and other things like education. But I really, really hope that if you live in Elthorne or you know somebody there and you agree with what I say, that they use their one of their votes to vote for me. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Peter. And I'll now pass over to Councillor Gary Malcolm.
Thank you. So first of all, let me just thank you for organising the event. I think Hustings, as you said, are a great way for people to ask questions of politicians and for politicians to listen to people. So in terms of the ECN manifesto, which we were sent over the past couple of weeks, part of that manifesto has gone into my own Liberal Democrat manifesto itself. And I think I'll just go through why I agree with some of those sort of points in there. I think there is an issue when the council owns buildings, owns facilities, it sells them off, whether that's a library or a community building. And I think once you've sold off a library or a community building, you make some money in the short term, but often you then cannot get that facility back. And I think it's really crucial that every community asset the council owns or is in charge of, it needs to try and keep and make sure community groups can use that, so that they can use that at a later date. And I think one of your points in that manifesto refers to that very clearly.
9,000 to 10,000 people die from the effects of air pollution per year in London. This is both a tragedy and a travesty of justice. If you want to fight pollution, you need to protect your green spaces. This means keeping Warren Farm in Hanwell in public hands. It means protecting Northfield's allotments from being further eroded through being built on. It means planting more trees in Southall. It means all of these things and more. Fighting pollution is in the DNA of the Green Party. And when you fight pollution, you fight climate change, which is the biggest threat facing humanity. Will you join us in that fight? My fourth point is tackling inequality. Inequality, poverty and homelessness is on the rise in Southall and Ealing and everywhere. This puts a strain on our already overburdened public services like the NHS and on our voluntary sectors. If you want to tackle inequality, you have to tackle it at its root, and its roots lie in austerity. There is one true anti-austerity party in Ealing, and that party is the Green Party. Other representatives might tell you that they're anti-austerity, but ask yourself, what have they done to fight austerity while they've been in office? I do know one thing, if you vote for the same parties again, you're likely to get the same results. And my final point is about accountability. Here in Ealing local government, we have what is effectively a one-party state. Out of all the subcommittees that are formed from Ealing Council, 8 out of 10 of those members are going to be from the Labour Party. Is this good for local democracy? We suspect that even some members of the Labour Party doubt that. So if we get Green voices on the council in May, we pledge to work with the ruling party when we agree with them, but we also pledge to raise a dissenting voice when we think that dissenting voice is necessary. We pledge to bring fresh ideas to our stale establishment in Ealing, and we pledge to be the voice of the people, because we believe in what is right, not who is right. You get 3 votes in May, make one of those votes a Green vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeremy, and now I'll pass over to Gregory Stafford.
Thank you very much, and first of all, thank you all very much for coming out this evening. It means a lot to us, because we come and want to hustle in front of you. It's great that people want to actually hear and debate and take part in local issues, and I think that's really, really important. And I also want to thank the Southall Community Alliance and the voluntary services across the borough for hosting this. Just a tiny bit about me. Councillor Greg Stafford, I'm leader of the Conservative group on the council, representing Hanger Hill Ward, and in my day job, for the whole of my career, I've worked in and around the NHS. So that's a bit of background on me. I just want to start on a positive note. I think that this borough has a lot going for it. It has so much to be proud of in its past, and I think it has a really, really positive future. Crossrail, just as an example, will bring a lot of investment to this borough. But I feel we're being let down, perhaps even disgracefully let down, by the current Labour administration in the town hall. Either through complacency or a lack of interest in what residents really want and think, it is letting us down. And anybody who has to deal with the town hall, the council, on a daily basis, whether it's to renew a parking permit or to get a pothole filled in their street, will know it's impossible to speak to anybody in the council. That is because the council has forgotten what it is there for. It is there to serve residents. And I promise if the Conservative Party is elected as the leading group in Ealing, we will listen to residents. And you can see it all around you. You can see the streets where the pavements are broken. You can see the potholes in the road. You can see the fact that the roads aren't swept or that your rubbish isn't collected. Now you might think this is the bread and butter stuff of the council, but we've had to make our top pledge cleaning up this borough because the current council either refuses to do it or doesn't have the interest. So that is something I absolutely promise you. And this isn't pie in the sky. You just have to walk down the road to the London Borough of Hillington, where they have free garden waste collection, where their rubbish is collected every week, where their roads are clean and the potholes are filled in. And they are under the same pressures financially as this council. But they, because they care about what residents think, are making that change. And if we are elected, we will do the same. I want to briefly touch on the manifesto that the voluntary network have put out. I think every single one of those points is vital. I'll just highlight 2 of them. The first one, the saving of Southall Town Hall. I give you this categorical pledge that if we are elected, We will not sell off Southall Town Hall. The second pledge, and I think it relates back to what I was talking about previously. The second manifesto commitment is that the voluntary sector is the best place in many, and indeed perhaps in most cases, to run local services. And rather than cutting back on the voluntary sector, the council should be doing more and more to use the voluntary sector to provide services to local people, because you are based in the communities, you know what people want, and that's the best way, and we will fund the voluntary sector. And I think that is only going to be beneficial for this borough. As some of my colleagues on the table have said, we live in a one-party state here in the London Borough of Ealing. And I ask you, if you currently, or have done, voted Labour before, and you have Labour councillors currently, ask yourself, what have those Labour councillors done for me? How have they made a difference? How have they cleaned up my area? How have they made my life better? And if you can't answer that question, I really do think it's a time for you to think of voting for another party, a party that is really committed to cleaning up this borough, namely the Conservative Party. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gregory. And last but not least, Sir Julian Bell.
Thanks, Jan Pell. And thank you again for organising tonight. It's a pleasure to be here. And let me first say that you've heard a few uncosted promises from some of the others here. And that's because they don't actually have to make decisions at the sharp end. We actually have to make the decisions, and we've been doing that for the last 8 years. So don't forget that this was a Conservative-run council between 2006 and 2010. And there are certainly lively debates in the council and a fully functioning opposition. So I wouldn't get carried away with thoughts of this being a one-party state. I think that's not true at all. Let me just go through our key pledges that we've put in front of the electorate. We've got 6. First of all, we want to build 2,500 new genuinely affordable homes at both council, social and London living rents over the next 4 years. Now, we know that there's a housing crisis. We know that there are 11,000 plus people on our waiting lists, and that also the numbers in temporary accommodation are going up. And people are being priced out of owning a home for sure, and also priced out of rented accommodation as well. Second pledge is that we will defend the borough against a Tory hard Brexit. Now, if we crash out of the EU with no agreement, which seemingly some of the hard Brexiteers in the Tory party, and I know that locally many of the Tory councillors were in favour of Brexit, it will have a significant impact on us as a borough. It will lose us jobs, it will lose us investment, and it will have a significant impact on our prosperity as a borough. Thirdly, we are going to continue our campaign to save our hospitals. Again, you will hear some nonsense about Ealing Hospital and Charing Cross Hospital being saved and that they're not closing. Well, I'm sorry, if you close the maternity unit, if you close the paediatric unit and the children's A&E, if you close the blue light ambulance A&E, there's no consultants running it, and you basically are left with an urgent care centre and a daycare centre. That is not a hospital. And that is what's still on the table. We've fought hard and we've managed to defer that decision. And I think we will continue to fight to save our hospitals. Our populations are increasing. The needs for those acute services are increasing, and it's madness to close them. So that campaign that we've led from the council, and now with Hammersmith and Fulham, now that it's a Labour council, will continue under a Labour administration. Fourthly, we're going to tackle knife crime and antisocial behaviour. There's an epidemic of knife crime. We've had a sad death just recently in Southall from knife crime, others in other parts of the borough. This is a scourge, and we've already had discussions with the borough commander about a knife amnesty and about how we can use our youth service and youth offending service to tackle the scourge of knife crime. Fifth is to deliver a cleaner borough and to boost recycling. I've got 1.5 according to my stopwatch. But I'll finish on time, John Paul. So we want a cleaner borough. Now, we were one of the first councils to accept and set the £400 fine for fly tipping. That's the highest you can go. So if you fly tip and we catch you, £400 fine. There's a new power that's just come in, which will allow councils to put up the fine for littering, and that will be at a maximum of £140. We are going to implement that maximum £140 fine for littering. So we are very serious about cleaning up the borough, and we'll make sure that we aggressively pursue that policy.
Concluding remarks, Julian, if we could, please.
30 seconds I've got. 60% recycling rate. We've boosted our recycling rate from 45 to 51%. We've got a target for 60%. And finally, in my last 15 seconds, it's all here on my clock, you can see it. We are going to keep up the fight against Tory austerity. Millions of pounds of cuts, so when Greg tells you he's going to pay for this and pay for that, he doesn't tell you that his party have cut us by £183 million. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julian. What we will now have is our Q&A session, and just a few simple ground rules. Obviously, if colleagues have any mobile phones, the usual, please put them on silent or switch them off as a courtesy to our panel. Secondly, I love passionate speakers and I love passionate questions, but please, let's have respectful questions to the panel. Patience, we'll get there. Well, no. Hands up already, I haven't finished just yet. I will get around to everybody. If you could please just identify yourself, name will be fine, and who you would like to question. Is it a question for everybody on the panel, or if you would like a particular panellist to answer, that would be helpful. And then finally, and this may be difficult, concise questions, please. I've been to lots of meetings where we have speeches and the only people who are allowed to make speeches and long statements today are this lot. We want some simple, clear and concise questions. I think there should be sufficient time to come back for supplementaries afterwards. And so we'll make a start. I'll just check if the roving mics are working. Is that one also? Yeah, let's try that. Well, we'll start here.
Hi, I'm Ellie. I'm here from the Young Ealing Foundation. So my question is to the whole panel. Since 2011, there's been a 50% reduction in funding for children and young people in the London Borough of Ealing. What are you guys going to do to mitigate against the effects of that and the impact that's having on children and young people in the borough?
Can we take two questions at a time? Debbie, just take a look.
No, I'm going to wait till the build-up starts. Yeah. I must be conservative. You must not be. Yeah.
My name is Mohammed and I'm representing an organization called Voice of the Somali Community. And I would like to thank the panel and also Southall Alliance for organizing this event tonight. And my first question would be for the whole panel, but in particular for the leader of Labour Councillor, Julian, that we are a community, Somali community. We are a community that exists in Ealing and also fought for Labour, but there are so many problems that are facing within our community, including knife crime and also the exclusion, which is and social services. There are so many problems facing within the community, and we are behind from other communities in terms of integration. And so far, from the Labour, we haven't got any support from the Labour councils. And in terms of education, and our youngsters are always, when they've been excluded from the school, they put to study center, which can only worsen the case, and those children end up in prison. So, and you come here for election day, when election is appearing, and you're asking us for our vote. But what have you done through those time you had as a Labour? What have you done? So I think we need from an answer in the future. What are you going to do for us? You only need our vote, and you will not make a difference. From what I listen from Conservative Party and also the Green Party, which I think they have made a clear point, what is Labour going to do? Or else we have to take our vote to Conservative and the Green Party. Yeah.
Thank you, Mohammed. We'll take those two questions now, shall we? So the first one was about mitigating voluntary sector cuts, and the second question was about problems affecting local Somali residents, which, although they were addressed mainly to Julian, I'm sure other panellists may have some views on. Perhaps I'll pass on to you, sir.
Thank you. Ellie, I'm old enough to really feel for young people. They are being stitched up by my generation and my parents' generation. Young people of today, young adults, these are the first people who will not be better off than their parents were. How can young people afford rent, let alone get a mortgage? It really, really is that bad. Now, there's only so much that any council can do, but there is one thing that I think is important, and it's this. When I was a lad, I went to Boys Brigade, and I loved it. I did 9 years. And I don't know what there is, but there doesn't seem to be any form or very little in the way of youth clubs and provision for young people to go, share their experiences and to feel part of society. And that is one thing that local authorities can do, is give a lot of support to young people. I'm a big believer in the younger the person is to feel part of a society, then the less likely they are to do bad things later in life. And that comes me on to Mohammed's question, particularly about the Somali community. I know it's directed towards Julian, so I will be brief. But it is Thank you. Is that okay? Okay, I don't know whose fault that was. Okay, Mohammed, it's a similar question, similar to what I just gave a moment.
Stand up and shout.
Okay, can you hear me? Shall I go without this? Sorry, I don't. One of the things that we don't see enough of in schools is anti-bullying policies, and that needs to be at a primary level, right when kids, start primary school, and even there needs to be more involvement at nursery level, at preschool. Kids need to feel part of society. When Labour came in under Tony Blair, they had this idea of a stakeholder society, which actually worked, and then the government dropped it. I hope that's answered your questions.
I think we're having a slight problem with our audio. Can everybody hear us at the front? Yeah, is that okay? And I'm sure our panellists have got good lungs. They can make themselves heard above them. So, maybe if you can try and sort that out.
Okay, thank you. I'll both of them have similar answers in some respects. But when we're looking at Ellie's question there are two aspects. One partially mentioned just then. The first one is about when you've made severe cuts, or when the government have made severe cuts over recent years, the council has had to look again at how it's going to alter its spending and to solve some of the problems. And what it's actually needed to do is to, rather than trying to deal with a problem when it arrives, you look back and go, why has this situation arisen? How do we help families many years before a problem actually ever exists? So some of that is about education, some of that's to do with the families, some of that is to what the council deal with. The council has a database of lots of different people, and it can help predict when problems might occur in the future. And I think that way you can actually address some of the problems that occur when the government are making such cuts as they are at the moment. The comment about youth clubs is a very good one. In my area, the Ward Forum that I'm in charge of, we have a small budget, but we've given it over a number of years £5,000 on 2 occasions to help set up a youth club from scratch. And what that actually did was that got a lot of teenagers who were sometimes in trouble with the police, sometimes not. Parents were very concerned that because of bullying and other issues, they were going to be in trouble. And what that has shown is the figures that we've seen from there have been amazing. And basically, that £10,000 plus money they've raised themselves has helped reduce so many problems. They now win lots of sporting events because they now do so many cultural, so many positive events. So I think part of it is about engaging the community. Coming to Mohammed's question, I think one of the issues is there is a real problem in the community where people don't trust the police. The police don't really know how to address an issue like knife crime sometimes. They want to come in heavy-handed, but the community, of course, don't feel that's appropriate, and it is a difficult situation. I think the Met, over many years, has not put itself in a very good situation, and some of these problems that we're seeing today, in part, is because the community relations are broken down. And I think the council, the police, and different people in different areas of the borough all need to sort of work together to take away the tension from some of these issues, and then that can help stop problems before they actually get really serious.
Jeremy?
Well, my answer would be is the cuts that we've seen and the austerity. The cuts that we've seen and the austerity is probably the biggest problem. Working hand in hand with the community, being the voice of the community. I've got to admit, I don't know too much about the child issue, so we're listening. Is my answer would be yes. As far as Mohammed's question is concerned, as far as Mohammed's question is concerned, we've got this 10-point manifesto which was helping the voluntary sector, and we want to help the voluntary sector bring all the communities together, and that means working with the Ealing Community Network and working with each single community in Ealing.
Thanks very much, Eddie. I think, as I alluded to in my earlier speech, one of the things that I think is absolutely key is that generally, in my opinion and through experience, is that the voluntary sector generally does things better and cheaper than the council can do. So from my experience, what I would do if I was the leader of the council is to find every opportunity to take money away from council-provided facilities and give them over to the voluntary sector who can do them better, more efficiently, and more tailored to the communities that they're actually serving. I think that's really important. I just remember back when I was first elected as a councillor, just over 11 years ago. I went to the KICS project on Cockley Close, and that was a project run in conjunction with Brentford Football Club, which was giving young people on that estate the opportunity to join football teams, play in a very informal manner every, I think it was twice a week. I'm not aware if that project's still going, but something like that, something very simple, which didn't require a lot of money, brought people together. And I think it's about going out into those communities, asking the community, what is it that you want, and how can we as the council facilitate you to get that across? And I think we do, because the question of money has been touched on. I think we just have to be really clear. I do not deny that the council has had to make savings. But if you look at the money that it is wasting on top of that, it's eye-watering. Give you just a couple of examples. Over the last 4 years, £50 million worth of council tax has not been collected by this council. £8 million has been spent on consultants and agency fees. Now, even if 1% of that £58 million was spent on a youth project, on youth projects, we could make some significant difference. And moving on to Mohammed, I completely agree with you. I think I'm really proud, for the first time in the Conservative Party standing at this local election, we actually have candidates who come from the Somali community. Because I think there is a recognition of the Somali community that Labour has let them down. And I really hope that those candidates will grow over the coming years. And I very much hope they'll be elected because they really do input. And I think that having a voice on the council is the first step for the Somali community. But the reality is, when I talk to the Somali community in my ward and in wards surrounding it, what they tell me is they don't want people to tiptoe around the issue. They don't want it to pretend that it really isn't a problem. There is significant problems in the Somali community of being neglected, let down and ignored, and especially around violent crime. And I think it's a real shame, I think it's a disgrace, that the Mayor of London, we have an epidemic in knife crime, the Mayor of London has not appeared to make any statement on this whatsoever. If you heard David Lammy, who's no fan of the Conservative Party last night, laying into the Mayor of London about his lack of action on this issue, I think it's a real problem. But for me, it's about getting into those communities, talking to them, educating the children that the life of crime is not for them. There are projects out there, but we need to work together. It's the council, police, and the local communities of all faiths, of all ethnic backgrounds, working together to make sure that we live as a society as a whole. And I think one of my final points, so I've gone on a bit on this one, but my final point on this one is, I do not stand here pretending I have all the answers. But all the answers are out there. All of you, all the thousands and hundreds of thousands of people in this borough have the solutions to these problems. It goes back to what I was saying in my speech. It's about the council listening and responding to the residents. And that's what I promise to do.
Thanks for the question, Ellie. And in the period from 2010 to 2014, we were dealing with I believe it was £97 million of the cuts. And in that administration, I made a pledge that I would protect youth services. And in that period, we protected youth services. We also made lots of investments as well, which I'll come on to in a minute. 2014, 2018, the cuts carried on. And we had another £86 million of cuts to find. And unfortunately, it was no longer possible for me to say, we'll protect the youth service. So what we did as a result of that was look to target the funding that we receive to our most vulnerable young people and make sure that the reducing amounts of money that we did have was spent on those young people who needed it most. We've also looked to find alternative sources of funding. So we have a very successful shout-out conference for our young people, which we managed to get Ealing, Hammersmith and West London College to pay for. We'll look at alternative models as well as to how we can run our youth service in the future to see if we can get funding from elsewhere as well. But let me tell you, we've also invested significant amounts of money in our schools for our young people. So there's not a school in the borough virtually that's not expanded in the last 8 years, and we've probably borrowed more money than any local authority in the country to expand our schools and to make sure that the facilities at our schools are the very best to give our young people the best starting line. Let me also just say that we've invested significant amounts of money in sports and leisure facilities. I went to Rectory Park 2 weeks ago to open the new Middlesex FA Sports HQ. It has 2 huge 4G pitches, and that's just one of many sports facilities that we've developed, which benefit everybody, but I think particularly will benefit our young people as an Olympic legacy. We're also looking to increase the number of apprenticeships for our young people, so we're pledging to find 750 more apprenticeships than we already have in the next 4 years. And we're also investing in training facilities. So just across the road, you will see that there is the Manor House. That is a training centre for those in the hospitality and food industry, chefs and hospitality. And that will give young people a job and a skill. And these training opportunities are critical as well. In terms of, Mohammed, your points about the Somali community, I would say that I have been one who's always tried to listen to the Somali community. I don't know if you're aware of the Somali Achievement Awards, but they're held every year and have been held for at least the last 4 or 5 years. As the council, we've supported those achievement awards, and we've given them funding, and I've attended every one, because I think we need to give really positive role models for the Somali community and the youngsters, and emphasise all the really, really positive achievements amongst the Somali community. And that's one way that we've been doing that. In terms of council candidates, we've already got Dr. Abdullah Gulaid, who's an Acton Central councillor, and we're hoping to add a Labour councillor in Ealing Common ward, Abdi Diwali, who's a very hard-working and intelligent young man who I think would be an excellent councillor. I am always open to talk to the Somali community and listen to what they have to say and to try and address those issues. So I'm very happy to meet with you.
Can I start with Jamila at the back? She had a hand up first. I'll come back to you, Oliver. We'll take 2 questions at a time.
It's basically for Councillor Bell, first of all. You said you listened, but for 15 of your councillors on all the wards, they don't listen to ward forums. Every time you go with complaints, and I've seen some of the Somali complaints come to the ward forums, and also seen them at Southall Community Alliance ward forums as well. They go back to, and nobody takes any notice of them. You keep blaming the cuts. Southall has been in a pride for the last 15 years, Mr. Bell. You have poured money to Southall Boulevard. Nothing is improved. Flight tipping was increased here before it went to Ealing Broadway and Ealing Common. That's only been a recent event. What happens when the council don't collect and there's flight tipping in the streets? Who do we find? How much is your fine? How much the resident can fine you when you do not collect our rubbish for flight tipping and also a multiple occupation? This goes into 2 questions. One is multiple occupation, and you know these houses are multiple, and the mattresses are there, the furniture are there. Where do we take our complaint and get them fined for those spaces? And you said green spaces. You see a green space in Southall, there's a house there within 24 hours. So, pollution, welfare of the society, of the community of Southall, that is not what you're listening. You want to vote, and you're scaremongering them, and you brought up the cuts again, and you brought up Ealing Hospital. And that's where your votes are.
Oliver. One that way.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you very much. My name is Oliver.
Try that, yeah.
My name is Oliver. I live round the corner in Ainsley Road. I have been listening carefully. My award for the best tie definitely goes to Jeremy. I think it's very good.
I'm not so impressed
The microphone?
With the microphones. I'm disappointed that there hasn't been a reference to the huge tendering out of NHS services, £500 million, possibly rising to £1 billion of our NHS services going out to tender in a way that has never happened anywhere around Britain. It's absolutely mega, and it's our NHS which is the biggest issue facing Southall, not just the 300 beds which are supposed to be closed at Ealing Hospital and the Blue Light Accident and Emergency Department to be closed at Ealing Hospital, but this huge tendering out, possibly privatisation, and it's a huge issue, and you don't realise what you've got until somebody takes it away. And we mustn't let that happen. And I want all the local politicians to say what they think about it, because I'm not sure some of the politicians I've talked to are even aware of this huge tendering out in Ealing that's unprecedented. I'm not even sure they're aware of it. I talked to one person earlier who just said, "Oh, I don't believe it. I don't believe it." And it's a reality, and if we let it happen without a word being said, then what are we all doing here? So we've lost our job centre in Southall, we've lost a police station, in fact there were 2 police stations once in Southall. Unfortunately, though, that's products of the Tory government cuts. Unfortunately, the Labour Council are cutting Southall Town Hall, and the biggest thing, far and away of all of that, is the health service and the hospital, and I would really like to hear exact policies from the parties on the NHS privatisation and Ealing Hospital. Thank you.
What we'll do is we'll try and get a response in reverse order, so if we could deal with the issue about NHS contracting. Sorry, is this... Let's try it this way. Let's try it this way. Yeah. So if we could have a response from the panellists about the issue of NHS services and tendering out, and then deal with the question or the issues posed by Jamila about street cleanliness or the lack thereof. So,
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good, right. Yeah, on the NHS, absolutely agree, 100%. There's some things which the private sector are good at, and some things which the private sector isn't good at, and the NHS is one. Let's not forget it started under Labour, okay? They're the ones who started it. And the idea that certain people, you know, should make a profit out of our health service, to me, is utterly, utterly repugnant. I don't mind telling you that I owe Ealing Hospital my life. It was about 10 years ago, I fell off a ladder backwards on my head and my neck should have broken. Fortunately, somebody saw it, they took me to Ealing A&E. Well, I'm here now. And that, to me, is something very, very much worth saving. So yeah, I'm with you on that 100%. And Jamila, I'm also with you on Southall councillors. I live in Southall, I live on Lady Margaret Road. I think the problem, if I can put things in neutral terms, is when you've got a party which just has such a big majority that it's just so easy to get complacent. And put it in simple terms, and this comes back to Mohammed's point, why should Southall councillors care about Somalians, for instance? They've got such a huge majority, so they don't care. That's to be expected. And all I can do is get out, spread the word, vote for somebody else. Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of the hospital, there was a couple of questions that we were given earlier. So, first of all, I'm against any of the downgrades that have happened to Ealing Hospital and some of the others that may or may not happen in the future. I was asked, what have I done about that? Well, myself with the council, myself and the Labour group have both been to a number of rallies and spoke at those, handed petitions into Jeremy Hunt and at 10 Downing Street as part of that campaign. In terms of privatisation, generally there is a need to invest more in your health service, not make cuts or reductions, and so the current plans are totally wrong. Profit and the health service don't really work. There are very few examples where privatising something in the health service appears to work. because you're given an element as profit which could have been reinvested. And so as a default, I don't think the idea of privatising health services is a good system. So I would be generally against what you mentioned earlier. Coming back to what Jamila said, I think there have been 2 decreases in the frequency of street cleaning from weekly to anything up to 12 weeks, depending on the type of road you live on. My party would fund, and we've got this funded in a number of ways, but one of them is by reducing councils' allowances by £330,000 overall. And that would bring back weekly street cleansing, street sweeping. So where we were a year ago, the contractor in my view was garbage, no good. But if we take it in-house and we have weekly street cleaning, there's a chance we can actually then go back to a better situation where we don't see as much fly tips, we don't have leaves, people don't trip over when it's rained in winter, and there is far less litter. So I think we need to go back to where we were a number of years ago.
So, nobody's more against the privatisation of the NHS than the Green Party. It was Caroline Lucas who brought in a bill to actually try and reverse the privatisation that we're seeing now. It wasn't successful, but we are against it. I was given a stat as we came in, £17 million per week is spent on the private sector. In other words, privatising the NHS costs us £17 million per week. So this is something we need to work very hard to reverse, and this is something the Green Party will work. We lost Ealing maternity just a couple of years ago, didn't we? Now Ealing Council, Ealing Hospital is under threat. Took part in the demonstrations to fight against that. So nobody will work harder than the Green Party to fight against the private initiatives that we see. As far as the fly tipping is concerned, I woke up yesterday to see in East Acton our candidate had taken photos of the fly tipping that was taking place. Rupert Hook got involved, and we eventually got that cleared, so at least that was a minor victory for the Green Party. And in our ward forums, the police are very impressive. They do their best to fight, to work, even though they are being put to the bone. So we are going to fight very hard against that.
Thank you very much, Oliver. First of all, to your questions. I think, just to tackle the point on privatisation, I think it depends what you mean by privatisation. The reality is, almost every single doctor's surgery in this country, and absolutely every single dental surgery in this country, is a private business, run by that doctor or that dentist or a conglomerate. So the reality, we're talking about privatisation, I'll come specifically.
He's juggling with words now, isn't he?
Tony.
The reality is, it depends what you mean by privatisation. What matters to me, let me be clear, I work in the NHS, I see what happens on the front line every single day. What matters is that we, you, our children are access good, top healthcare, free at the point of use. That is what matters, and that is what we will not get rid of. No one in any party is saying that we would stop that free at the point of use service of our services. So, I would look at each individual decision being made by the NHS, locally and nationally, and decide whether it is appropriate based on whether the person who is receiving the care is getting the best care free at the point of use. So that's my answer. Specifically on Ealing Hospital, I think we need to be really clear about what's going on at Ealing Hospital. Don't get me wrong, I would love to see an all-singing, all-dancing, teaching hospital which does absolutely everything under the sun at the Ealing site. But the reality is that is not possible. Someone mentioned the maternity unit. The reason the maternity unit closed was because not enough women were going there to have their children there. The Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, the top people in this country, the medics, not politicians, set a number of how many live births it's safe to have at a hospital. We weren't meeting that, despite the fact we have one of the highest birth rates In London, the women of this borough were choosing not to go to that hospital. And that was the reason it closed. Now, we as the Conservative Party had some real concerns about some of the proposals that were happening at Ealing Hospital. And that's why, in the early days of this campaign, we stood with the other parties, went on those marches and made those representations. The biggest thing for us was we would not want to see any closures of beds unless there was a decrease in the number of people wanting and needing to go to the hospital. And we have got that categorical assurance, both from the Secretary of State, but more importantly, from the local doctors who run the service in Ealing, who have said categorically, not a single bed will close at Ealing Hospital unless they see a significant and sustained reduction in the number of people presenting in that hospital. So no beds are going if people still want to go there or need to go there. So let's be clear. And the final thing I'll make on the NHS point. We've talked about it a lot, and it is a significant issue. But the reality is, we as councillors have absolutely no influence on whether or not that hospital stays open or not. And if you want to vote for the party based on that issue alone, you are going to re-elect a Labour group who will talk a good talk, march a good march, but your roads will still be potholed, your streets will still be unswept, and that hospital will still remain open because it will not close. Moving on to Jamila's point. Jamila is absolutely right. It's really interesting. When I first became a councillor, I only dealt with stuff that was coming into my own ward. But as the years have gone on, time and time again, suddenly I'm getting more and more casework coming from other parts of the borough, and especially Southall, because the Labour councillors in Southall just believe that if they turn up on the day, you will re-elect them. This is your opportunity to say, no, actually, I'm sick of just you turning up and doing nothing. I can re-elect somebody else. The fact that fly tipping, Julian Bell talks about the fact he's increased the fines. It's made a blind bit of difference. Fly tipping has gone up in this borough by over 200%. You can put the fines up as much as you like. The fact is, most of those fines seem to be going to poor old ladies who are pouring coffee down the drain. They're not actually talking about the people who are fly tipping in this borough. That is a significant problem. The council's own figures show that in the last quarter, nearly a third of the streets in this borough were not cleaned appropriately. This is the council's own figures. So this is your opportunity. This is your real opportunity to clean up this borough. On the 3rd of May, if you want a cleaner borough, if you want a safer borough, you've got to get rid of Labour, and the only people who can deliver for you are the Conservative Party.
I think the first thing we should say is that Jamila should declare an interest, as she's a Tory candidate in Norwood Green. So, somewhat of a planted question.
I am not a candidate in Norwood. You must get your facts right, and you must check with Mr. Jackson, who is the candidate in that ward. I am not standing a candidate. So I live in this borough for over 27 years. So
we need to ask questions.
I answer that question.
Can I just say something?
Paid a member of the Conservative Party.
Can we
Excuse
get...
me. Why is it?
Can I
listen to me
the questions? No,
she made a point.
Tony,
anybody else.
That's not right.
You didn't interrupt anybody else.
It's not right.
So let me answer the questions like you've let everybody else answer the questions. So the first thing to say is that any party that comes in after the 3rd of May is going to have to deal with another £57 million of cuts from, guess who? The Tory party nationally, okay? And that is a significant challenge that somebody will have to face. Likely to be us, but we're never complacent. Now, we've found a way of tackling fly tipping which doesn't cost the council taxpayer a penny, okay? We've set up 4 multidisciplinary teams that each have a truck, and within that team there are council officers, there are Amy officers, our contractor, who we've just given the sack to, because I agree with Gary, they're not good enough, and that's why we've got rid of them. And there's also officers from a company called Kingdom, and what we do with those teams as they go around with their trucks is that they will obviously collect the rubbish, rubbish, but they don't just chuck it in the back of the truck. And I've been down Southall streets with them, and we operate in Southall, because yes, there is a problem, but let's face this, it's a national problem of fly tipping. It's not just Ealing, it's right across the country. But when they get those black bags, we look in them, and we look for evidence as to where those black bags have come from, and we photograph the evidence when we've got any specific address and name on them, and then those people will get a fine. Now, if it's just one bag or two bags, we can only give them a littering fine. At the moment, that's £80. We're going to stick it up to 140. People have got to learn that they can't just dump their rubbish anywhere they like. It's a disgraceful, unsocial thing to do. Equally, if it's more than two black bags and there's a sustained amount of fly tipping, maximum £400 fine. These teams collect the evidence and we make sure that we target and crack down on those who are unsocial and fly tipping and littering. Those 4 teams work tirelessly, have issued tens of thousands of fines, and it doesn't cost the council taxpayer anything. Let me come on to the hospital, and I think I want to put on record my thanks to Save Ealing NHS, because they've been fantastic, and we have worked on with them over the entire period of this campaign, which has been a long and hard campaign. It's been going on now for pretty much 6-7 years. We've been fighting to save our hospitals, and I pay tribute to all of the volunteers in Save Ealing NHS who've been fantastic. I'd also like to thank the Greens and the Lib Dems for their continued support with this campaign. We want you to come back on board, Greg, but you've kind of you've drank in your National Party's propaganda that you are saving the A&Es. You're not saving the A&Es. If they don't have blue light ambulances, if they're not run by consultants, they're not run by consultants. The plan is that they would be run, no disrespect to GPs, they would be run by GPs. So they will not be A&Es as the public recognise them, and that is all documented and absolutely clear. And although you're making pledges about no reduction in beds, that axe is still held over Ealing and Charing Cross hospitals. It's not been taken away. And until it's taken away, and all the small print which talks about how it's going to be closed and downgraded, or whatever word you want to use, we're going to keep campaigning, and we ain't going to stop campaigning until we get the axe removed completely. And again, would welcome cross-party support if you give it. In terms of the question about the out-of-hospital services and the single contractor, that's the decision that the CCG is making, not the council, so it's not our decision. But we would, and I've made it clear to the CCG that we would not support privatisation of that contract.
I'll take 2 more questions, but could I, in view of time, it's 8:15, I did ask the audience to ask concise questions. Could I just remind the panellists if we could get some concise answers? It'll help the flow. So, Amy and Suresh, then I'll come to you.
Right, my question is to all the panel. You've got every single one of you guys have come here, put your views and opinions in front, and you've told us what you guys are going to do. Once you guys get elected, not one of you are going to come back here, speak to the to the community. It's a multicultural community in Southall. It's not just about Somalians, it's about the Christians, the Hindus, the Muslims, and the Sikhs, and the Somalians. You guys have come here with that one question, that if we get elected, we will do this. Town hall is going. The black and white building across the road is gone. Yeah? Ealing Council, the hospitals are going. This culture, this community needs these places. Our kids need the places. You guys have come here to tell us that you want to do this, that, and that. What's the guarantee that you guys are going to give us, that you guys are going to come back and question us and ask us, have you got this done? Fly tipping, rubbish. Some people don't even throw the rubbish in the bin bags. They won't even put a dress in a bin bag. Where can you find a tag on a bed? Where can you find a tag on a dirty nappy or a carton? You can't. You want vote from us lot. You guys are going to show us something, that you're going to do something for Southall. The multicultural community here who needs the help, not take away what we've got.
Suresh, then I'll come back to the others.
Okay, thank you.
My name...
Yeah, go on, Suresh.
Sorry, Andy. My name is Suresh Grover. I'm the director of the monitoring group. It's very difficult to ask one question from all of you because you have so many different positions. And I normally don't come to Hustings because you get the same answers from politicians and an attack on other politicians. Before I ask a question, can I just correct two things that you said, which I think is important? I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name. I don't want to be rude about it.
Stafford.
Yeah, I know you're leader of the council. The first thing you said is that the mayor never said anything about knifing. I actually deal with the knifings in Tottenham as a monitoring group. It was actually the mayor 3 weeks ago who asked for a meeting with the Home Secretary and Prime Minister. I'm not a member of the Labour Party, by the way. So I just want to correct you on that. And the Mayor of London has raised the issue of knife crimes for about a year and a half, consistently. So again, I say I'm not somebody who's a member of the Labour Party, and I'm going to come to Julian in a minute and be very hard with him. The second thing you said is that you don't want one-party state. But can I remind you that your party called for an election to decimate Jeremy Corbyn because you wanted a one-party state. So let's not be hypocritical about it. You have a one-party state because people voted for Labour. I'm somebody who has voted for Labour, but I'm thinking actually of voting Green because of what you said. I'm not convinced. I'll tell you why I won't vote Tory. And I just want to ask a question.
Can I just respond to that last point?
Yeah, you can come back. Listen, in terms of time, we've only had about 5 minutes. You guys have had 60 minutes. Yeah, it's actually very unfair to be in a Hustings when the audience gets about 5 minutes and politicians get about 1 hour. So you don't have to come back to me. We can be adult and disagree. It's not a problem. But I just wanted to correct you on some factual errors I think you made. In terms of the town hall, as you know, I'm the chair of the Save the Southall Town Hall. Your position at first, and in the legal papers, is that it was costing money, and that's why you had to sell it. You seem to have changed the tune because it's clear from your own documents and the audited accounts that are published in the... You guys are not making a loss, and the town hall is only making a loss of £1,000 a year because of the way you manage funding at the London Borough of Ealing. Now you seem to have changed the tune because of the public pressure that actually you want to spend money on social care. We have now produced a brochure which shows that both Tory and Labour have been asset stripping this town from 1975 onwards, even when there has been no austerity. Okay? So you've chosen this route of asset stripping. You can't deny this record, Julian, right? In my view, defending the health service is the other side of the coin of saving the town hall. If you want to be consistent about saving public services, especially those that doesn't make a loss, then why don't you save the Southall Town Hall? What is it about the Southall Town Hall that makes you want to sell it and gives a private occupier the access to a town hall, which is the only public building left in this town which has a secular basis, where everyone can use it rather than one denomination, where young, old, women... Yeah, but you took this time, I'm saying, why do you want to sell it? Why is it that you keep on...
Just give us the answer.
Why? It is not making a loss.
First of all...
Not making...
Hold on, Tony.
Can I just put it, is it because of the relationship you have with the IWA and the Mandir and the cohort you have in the Labour Party, which is totally undemocratic? Yeah. Is it because of that?
Okay, so we've got two questions, we've got a number of questions and issues. First, Amy's issues about after the election, will you come back as candidates and be responsive to the public? And then questions that Suresh has been asking, particularly around the town hall. And I guess they're directed a lot at Julian, but other colleagues on the panel, I'm sure, will feel they have points that they could raise. But I know, Gregory, you had some burning issues.
I've been put in my place. I agree to disagree on some of these things.
Fine. Julian, shall we start with yourself then?
First of all, to answer the question about whether we'll come back, of course we will, and we've been coming back since I became leader in 2010. In 2010, I went for a walk on patrol with the borough commander in Southall, and he showed me some of the problems that you were having to put up with on a daily basis, with drug taking in St John's churchyard, with some of the prostitution in some of the back alleys off the Broadway. I saw it firsthand, and we both said, this cannot carry on, we have to do something about it. So we set about consulting and talking with the residents of Southall with what we called was the Southall Big Plan. And Jampal was part of that, and lots of other people were part of that. Big consultation about, we wanted to know what mattered to the people of Southall. The first thing that came back was streets, keeping the streets clean and making sure that we invested in the streets. Now, there's been talk of us asset stripping Southall. The only asset strippers are to my right. They took, well, if you listen, you'll hear the answers, okay? Listen to what I'm saying. £12 million is what he's taken.
Why are you bashing him?
Well, his predecessor. His predecessor, okay? He started, hang on. The Tories sold those shops on the High Street, and they sold Southall Community Centre. £12 million. None of that £12 million got put back into Southall. Now, Suresh, your point about
saying why are you asset stripping as well?
Southall Town Hall being the only public building that's not secular is just not true. You're in a public building and
Julian,
right
you wanted
now,
to sell this. I campaigned for you not to sell this place, and it became a library. So let's be factual. You wanted to sell this 3 years ago. You wanted to sell this 3 years ago. I started up a campaign to save it, so don't give me a lecture. I saved this building, and we got the library in to save it. So it's not a public use building.
You were opposed to that.
But be factual, don't lie.
The other library.
Don't lie.
So we've put the money.
Can you let me answer the question?
Tony.
If you listen, I'll give you the answers. We have invested £2 million in this building. You've got a new purpose-built library. You've also got new purpose-built daycare facilities for those with disabilities and other social care needs. We have also invested £2 million in the Manor House across the road. That will be open, the rooms in that building will be available for community hire. So anybody that's using Southall Town Hall can come here and use these rooms.
It's a private business. It's going to be a private business.
Or they can use...
Listen, the Manor House is going to be a private business run by Brilliant.
Manor House, it's not. It's under the control of the council. So, £4 million of investment in this building and across the road.
So why not invest in the town hall? What's the problem?
Well, I could go on about other things that we've invested, which come to a total of about 20 million.
So why not invest in the town hall, Julian? Why not invest in the town hall? What's the problem?
I'm coming to that.
Please answer that.
All right, but let me just paint you the bigger picture. We have invested £20 million in Southall. You go to Spikesbridge Park, it's transformed from what it was 8 years ago. So many community assets that are of benefit to the young people and all of the community of Southall at Spikesbridge Park. £8 million for the improvements on the Broadway that have actually increased the travel times but actually increased the width of the pavements. That's what people wanted, when we consulted them on the Southall Big Plan.
Do you live in Southall? Because it doesn't look as if you live in Southall. I've asked a question, but it's not.
I want to answer the question as to why we're selling Southall. So we are losing money in terms of the revenue budget, but it's not a massive sum. I'll accept that. It's not a massive sum that we're losing.
How much is it?
But what's happening, Suresh, and it's the same with Ealing Town Hall, and it's the same with our other public buildings, because of the cuts, and I keep reminding people that we've already had 183 million cuts, we've got another 57 coming, and where does £57 million come from? It's a hell of a lot of money. There are capital repairs that are building up on Southall Town Hall, and we can't meet those capital repairs. We don't have the money, frankly, and that's why we've had to take reluctantly those kind of decisions where we've said we're going to invest in buildings that are more suited to the modern age in terms of this building with the library and the Manor House, and we'll sell Southall Town Hall. Now, the man who said that they're going to buy it, they have said that they will keep community use within that building. Okay, now we've yet to have those discussions, and we've got to get through the court proceedings that you've now initiated. So I probably can't say much more than that, but you know, the social care pressures are all part of the equation as to why we don't have the money to meet those ongoing capital repairs to that building.
I'd like to just now, we've got another 15 minutes, so quick questions. Yeah. Tony and this lady has been waiting patiently, then I'll come to some of the others. I'll come back to you.
Sorry, I really must object. This gentleman here, right at the very beginning, said he wants to ask a question, and not once has he been allowed to ask. Who?
This gentleman here. I'm coming, I'm just going to go. Tony, lady, and the gentleman, I'm going to go over there. Don't worry.
Let's really iron this problem about Southall Town Hall. You say you can't afford to run it. Yeah? I'll make a pledge with you now. Hand it over to us. We've got a builder that's prepared to do all the work. Hand it back to us. That's at no cost to you at all. Can you pledge it now, please?
No.
Why?
So, well, we're in court proceedings.
Sorry?
We're in
we're after the court proceedings.
We're in the middle of
we're going to win anyway, so why not just hand it back now?
So, while we're in the middle of court proceedings, and you know, we've made
a
decision, which is on record and is a cabinet decision, that we will sell it. We've made the decision.
Sorry? So
we've already made the decision.
You've already made the decision. Did you consult the people?
Well,
it doesn't matter. People don't matter. As long as you make the decision. The majority of the people don't
I
matter.
have never shied away from talking to people.
I didn't say that. Listen, I said to you very carefully.
Suresh has asked me questions, and I've been very happy to answer them, and we go back a long way.
Why are you diverting from me when I'm asking you the questions? If you can't answer my questions, it'll either be a yes, no, not sure,
well,
or you don't know.
I said no, and you didn't like it.
No, but then you interrupted, didn't you? What I'm saying to you is, yeah, sooner or later, something's got to give. I hope that we get a Southall back. At least we've got something. Our community has something. You've taken virtually everything away from us. You're asset stripping everything in Southall you can lay your hands on. But if you look at what you're doing, look at the roads. Potholes in there. You drive along, you've got to go like a snake. Cracks in the road. Rubbish. And what you employ Kingdom, you probably get, I don't know, £80 fine. You're now giving a private company, yeah, just for dropping a cigarette. Which is more important, a big mattress or a cigarette on the floor? They're going to go for the cigarette, 80 quid. And you want it to go up to 140. You can't find the money. You've just put a poll tax up or a council tax up. So what are you doing with the money? Do you have a reserve pot? Have you ever used that reserve pot in the last 20 years?
Can I answer that question?
Just quickly, yeah. We'll dealt with
okay, I'll stop there because he's
Thank you, Tony. Just quickly.
Well, basically, we put the council tax up by 5.99%. We've frozen the core council tax for the last 10 years. So we did it very reluctantly. It was a core council tax increase equivalent of inflation, 2.99. The government have also allowed councils to put council tax up by a maximum of 3% to pay for adult social care. The demand for adult social care and children's social care
is such that we have to put an extra £29 million in the next year to balance our budget and to pay for that extra demand for both children's and adult social care. That increase of the council tax of 5.99 will pay for only a quarter of that 29 million. It gives us £7.2 million, which is less than a quarter of the 29 that we're having to put in. In order to meet that, we're having to use our reserve. So yes, we have a reserve.
How much have you got in reserve?
Tony, I want to move on from this, really,
okay,
because I appreciate it, but there are other people who've been very, very patiently waiting. Lady over here, and the very patient Andre next. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, I just wanted to pick up on a couple of points, and then I have a question as well. About the street cleaning.
Speak a bit loudly.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Very loud voice. I've got a bit of a sore throat. But when we talked about street cleaning, two of you mentioned, I think, the Lib, sorry, I don't know your name, Tory, said once a week. When I was a child, going to school, the streets were cleaned every day, not once a week. Why can't we have them cleaned every day again? That's what we really want. Because you walk past rubbish that's sat on the street for 2 or 3 weeks now and nobody cleans it up. So I wanted to pick up on that. And then Julian said about the fines that have been handed out. I wanted to know how many have been collected. Because you said they'd handed out lots of fines, but have they actually collected any? And then my question is actually about developments, because there's been lots of developments in Ealing which are not sympathetic to the residents and not taking the residents' views on board. So given the importance of sustainable developments to local people, what guarantee can you give that you are free of conflicts of interest, such as being a landlord or having a close relationship to developments from which you will stand to personally gain?
Thank you. Thank you for waiting. Andre? Questions, please, because we're really running out of time and I need to come back to the panel. I know you've been waiting so patiently, but...
Yeah, okay. I was just going to make a remark that it's very virtuous to talk about savings. Everybody's taking money from the people. And where is the money going? All the police, fire station. But my question is about the NHS. I have put this question to the property developers at a consultation meeting. I think it's Montreux or Penrose, something like that, for building Sandbars, 2,000 hospitals over there. The problem is that they are building 2,000 houses, Barclay is building 3,700, Catalyst is building 500 or so, but altogether this is going to increase the population of Southall by about 30%. And at the same time, we're running down Ealing Hospital when greater pressure is going to be made on the hospital. So rather than running it down, Ealing Hospital should be expanded. So I was going to appeal to you, all the councillors, to get to join together with the property developers, if you can use that as an additional leverage for the government to reverse the cuts.
Thank you. So, ladies' questions were about daily as opposed to weekly cleaning. What's your position on that? About development, and then Andre's asking really about investment in social infrastructure. Quick fire answers. Can we start?
Okay, I'm going to do my best and go quickly, but
sorry.
Sorry. Point. There is, when I spoke to the property developers, they told me that they are doing premises for GPs, but they are prepared to make some money, some donations of services for the Ealing Hospital. That was just
Well, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I want to deal with the refuse first of all. It's not totally answering the point, Mina. I don't know if there was a daily service, but I'm going to say this. As you know, I'm a barrister. I had a client, a dentist in Southall, who was hit with one of these fines because a bag had been found and there was some correspondence in with the dentist's surgery's name on it. It was up the road. Now, she said to me, and I believed her, that at certain times of the week they come and take trade waste away and they religiously put their own waste out at those particular times. And what had happened, obviously, was somebody had picked up the black bag for whatever reason, taken it down the road, somebody from the council has come along and said, aha, we're going for that dentist. Now, she could have challenged that. She came to me, how much is it going to cost to challenge this in court? You're right about greedy old lawyers. It would have cost her more to pay me to come and do it than paying the fine. So what kind of choice did she have? And I will say this, where I live in Southall, there is a regular fly tipper here. I've gone on the council website, I've told the operatives, I've told loads of people, he is still doing it to this day. That was months ago. Now, in relation to developments, the problem, one of the fundamental problems in this country as a whole is that housing, private housing, is basically run by 6 big companies. And they seem to have councils in their pocket, and Ealing seems to be no exception. I'm a big believer in getting small local developers, small local house builders, people like you, back in building houses where you're from. I've done a little bit of house building. Sorry, Julian, some of our Section 106 money went on to Spikesbridge Park. You didn't say that. You also didn't say that some of the Olympic legacy money went on to Spikesbridge Park. I think you're being dishonest by trying to take the credit for that. As a party, we are a new party. We have spent a lot of time going around the country listening to people like you. And all I'm saying is, give us a chance. Thank you.
For every street, but that would obviously be a lot more. So I can't guarantee how much that extra would cost at this time. I'll have to come back to you on that. But it would. There are some streets that need cleaning more often, and they're already accounted for in that plan, because they're high streets, for example. There was a question about the proposals in terms of development. I think the council, at the moment, for the past few years, has just allowed most developments to proceed, almost without, in my view, having much scrutiny of that from either residents bodies. It's almost allowing everything through the system, and I don't think that is a good situation. I think we need to be tougher on developers, and I think we need to make sure that when you are putting significant new housing in there, you need to make sure that you've got the health infrastructure, the transport infrastructure, because what we've had too often is promises of doctor surgeries, and then the development starts to be made, people move in, and that doctor surgery plan has been changed, and there isn't the health services there isn't the transport services. So we need to make sure that those all happen at the same time. And when someone makes a guarantee, they're actually held to account on that guarantee. They can't walk away from that.
Jeremy?
So what we're doing in one of our target wards now in Hanwell is we formed a group with the residents called Hanwell Future, and one of the problems that we've puzzled over is indeed the worsening of the state of the roads, of the neighbourhood, and we're going to be working with them however we can. We're all volunteers. We'll go out and clean the streets ourselves if we need to, because let's face it, the council aren't doing it for us, are they? So we're working harder on that. As regards development, the residents are being ignored. We just heard at the beginning my example of Magley Road, and another example is they're building a small tower block on Peugeot garage, which is going to be built on contaminated ground. Over 200 objections from residents, 6 statements supporting the development, and was it given planning permission? Yes, it was. So we're going to be working definitely with the residents on this. We're going to be putting our own proposals for a more sustainable neighbourhood, because we're not in my backyards. We do want to come up with alternative proposals for the future of our neighbourhoods.
Thank you very much. Just in case I wasn't clear enough in my earlier answers, if the Conservatives get into power in Ealing, I make you this pledge: we will not sell Southall Town Hall. That's a categorical pledge. So you said that the lady, I think she's still there, or she may have gone, but the lady behind you was asking, well, can you commit to coming to see? I commit again to going to every single part of the borough on a regular basis, so you will be able to question me if I am leader of the council on my pledges and what I'm doing and my councillors are doing in your area. Now, you referred to 1975, I think it was. I was only born in 1982, so I'm not going to take all the blame for what's happened in Southall.
I wasn't talking about individually, talking about political parties.
In Southall. But what I will say to this, I've only been leader for 4 years, so I don't have a record to be able to stand on. Julian has a record that he's trying to defend, and it's interesting how he doesn't really want to defend the 8 years of this Labour administration. I don't have one. What I'll do, though, is I'll make a pledge to you. If I'm elected and I don't do what I'll say, I'll run all the way from the Vale at the one end of the Oxford Road, all the way to the other, in my underpants. Now that may or may
only if you're going to get sponsorship while you do it.
That may or may not be.
Is this being recorded?
I'll make that as a pledge to you.
Yeah, you've got him on camera.
But to be serious about some of the other points that were made, I've said, and I think again, if I make it clear, I've said it a little bit like Gary said. We have said very clearly that we will sweep every street at least once a week. And as Gary says, that means that some residential roads that don't have a big build-up will get every once a week, whereas others will become many times a day. For example, in my own ward, we have the Hanger Lane gyratory system. That is a place that needs to be swept at least twice a day, if not more. And there are similar things like the high roads and high streets in Southall will also have to be done. And that's the reality. That's what residents want. It's about not, Julian stood here and said, you've got, as if, you should be grateful that he's giving you stuff that you've already paid for through your council tax. It's your money. You need to hold us to account as politicians. You want your streets swept. We should be able to deliver that for you, so we will. In terms of developments, my Green colleague earlier, in one of his early answers, mentioned 77 Madeley Road, which again is in my ward. And I went to the site visits, I made representations to the planning committee, we spoke at planning committee and said it was a terrible idea. And of course, the Labour councillors voted through, as they do with almost every single other planning application that comes through, because they are absolutely beholden to the developers. And every time there's a spare patch of land, they push through as much housing in the smallest space, as high as possible, as deep as possible, without thinking about how residents, both the current ones and the ones that are going to move in, are going to access local services. And this is a really, really fundamental point. We should not be having any large developments, whether it be on the Southall Gasworks site or anywhere else in Southall, where we do not have the GP surgeries, the schools, and the other community assets, such as the community centres and playgrounds for children. And that should be built in, and that must happen if we're building these things. And I think that is absolutely key. And one tiny thing on housing, which no one seems to have touched on yet, and I'm sorry if you've just got burning question on this, but I think it's worth saying. We need to make sure that we also include affordable housing in this. Affordable and social housing. Because the reality is we don't have enough in this borough. Now, one of Julian's pledges is for this, but he's only had 8 years to do this. In fact, one of his pledges previously, it was going to be 50% social housing and all things. He's nowhere near met that. So let's be realistic. Let's make sure we get the affordable housing that we need. We put it in, and we demand that the developers put it in there as well. Thank you.
Quick replies, Julian. Let's take a couple more questions.
Again, let's look at the big picture. 2 years this June, we went over to the fortnightly collections for waste and recycling, and we introduced the black and blue wheelie bins. Now, Southall had cottoned on to the benefits of wheelie bins before the rest of the borough, in that you'd had your black wheelie bins for a while. You've now got the blue ones, and we've gone over to the new system. Now, you've probably forgotten what happened before, and why Southall went with the black wheelie bins first, and that was because of foxes strewing our streets with rubbish from black bags being ripped open in the night. There was an opportunity when the wheelie bins bedded in to actually reduce the amount that we spent on street cleaning, because clearly there has been a dividend in terms of keeping all of that spillage that was coming from the foxes off our streets. Now, we have said, though, that we would review how much street cleaning there would be after that change in June of 2016 bedded in. So in February of last year, we reviewed everything, and yes, there was some places in our town centres where we've got daily or twice daily street cleaning. Adjacent roads to town centres, we've got weekly cleaning or daily cleaning, depending on what's actually needed. We had gone to residential streets being cleaned 3 weekly, but in the review of February 2017, we said, look, that's not sufficient. We need to increase the frequency again, so we put it to 2 weekly for residential streets. Now, there are various uncosted pledges coming from my colleagues to my right. I repeat, we have £57 million of cuts coming our way, and we still have to balance our budget. So, lots of promises, but no way of being able to pay for it. In terms of how many littering fines are collected, it's probably, I don't know the latest figures, the last figures I saw, it was about 56%. I would like to collect more, obviously, but that's a significant amount of money, and it more than covers the cost of those 4 fly tipping teams that I talked about. In terms of sustainable development, I think it's important for people to understand how planning works. Planning is a quasi-judicial role that councillors have to perform, and they have to make their decisions in planning committee on planning grounds. And they listen to the arguments. They can't prejudge how they're going to vote on a particular application, and they have to make their decisions on planning grounds. Now, the opposition are trying to say that the Labour councillors on planning just put things through without question. That's not true. If you go to planning committee, you'll see Labour councillors voting against particular developments, and the Labour councillors are split. Some will vote something for something, and other Labour councillors will vote against it, because they all have to make that decision on a particular application based on the planning grounds and the debate that happens at planning committee. Now, there have been some recent development in Hanwell where the Rolls-Royce, I can't remember what it's called now, but that was like a 9-storey, the Marshall building. So that was like a 9-storey proposal. Planning committee rejected that. Not in keeping with Hanwell Town Centre, and quite right for them to do so. But that's not my decision, that's the planning committee's decision. They make those decisions, and as I say, it's not on party grounds. What you do see is the opposition trying to use planning and not following planning grounds and making decisions in order to whip up political opposition. And this is a famous trick that they use quite often, especially when we get close to elections. It always happens at elections. They'll whip up a storm about a particular
the Marshall building just before the election. What was that about, tricks?
It's all about planning grounds. It's clear that you make decisions on planning grounds, and I've given you one which is clear. That was 9 stories, and it wasn't in character of the town. They don't like it when they hear the truth. They use planning as a political weapon in order to try and attack the administration.
I'll come back to it. Very, very quickly.
Just on that point, because the London plan actually says with basement developments, you must take into account what the neighbours and the people that are going to be affected have to say. And that Madley Road development, they did not listen to the residents at all. So that's not taken into account, and that's what the mayor says.
That's one aspect of a very complex planning decision.
Listen, we can agree to disagree. Listen, it's nearly 9 o'clock. I'm going to take 2 very quick final questions from the back. No, 2. Gentleman right at the back, and Mr. Bullock. And then, instead of the 2 minutes that we had originally allotted to the panellists, I'm going to take chair's action and give you 1 minute each. And we're not going to use Julian's very generous stopwatch, we'll use badges instead to keep you to your pleasure. So, gentlemen at the back.
Yes. This one about Julian Bell. How keen and security can be in practice your brown shirts? I ask because you seem to take a lot of relish in talking about fining, as if to elevate yourself. Also, I saw a panorama documentary a while back that highlighted a case about bullying, kingdom security bullying of people in Ealing. So, are they going to be basically your brown shirts in practice in the borough?
Thank you. This is a question for Julian. Mr. Gullen.
Another question regarding fine for Mr. Savidas about fines. Local charities dealing with foreign services were always astonished to the number of letters we have been bombarded with regarding housing benefit areas or cancer tax areas. We have a lot of cases. The latest letter we have, we sent to the generation today, was warning a lady who's not even hard-working lady, being all abused, with no help or support from housing benefit or cancer tax, with that DB saying, with that red letter, this is the final reminder, if you don't pay this, that DB, we will take hold of your property. This is the letter. Today we send that letter to the housing generation. I will be happy if you request the officer from that department and read that letter and then you respond to us personally. And the other question.
No, Mr. Gullen.
No, the other one, this one.
Very quickly.
That, there's a sample going, for a policy going by taking press around, change of council property agreement tendency, change from permanent to periodic. Nobody can understand the way they want this thing to be. Now, when they are caught up to the public interest, now they are intending to run a consultation on this, but they are already implementing this already with a new tenant. Every household, the way I know, of living in a council property is receiving, especially from the vulnerable groups who doesn't understand it, or who doesn't understand this policy. So the opposition, are you aware of this, and why are we not speaking?
Okay, so two questions, questions with a few bits, mainly for Julian and I think also for Gregory, perhaps? Julian, just quick.
Yeah, so Kingdom, there was the case that Greg referred to about the woman pouring the coffee down the drain. And obviously we talked to Kingdom and said, ridiculous, you can't be issuing fines in those circumstances. And we asked them to go back and intensify the training that they give to their operatives to make sure that they are giving out appropriate fines. Now, you'll always find an example where it's probably not being properly issued, and if people represent to us and say, look, this is the circumstances, fines can get rescinded and refunded, and we do that. So I don't accept that we're kind of gung-ho about this, but on the other hand, the kind of antisocial behaviour of those who are fly tipping and littering, those who are actually doing that, they need to be brought to account. And there's only one thing that they understand, and that's being hit in their pocket. So I don't make any kind of apologies for doing that, but on the other hand, recognise that where it's been issued incorrectly, that's corrected. Now, in terms of the issue about debt collection, again, I have to take up the individual case, but in our manifesto, the Labour Party manifesto that we're about to issue, we are looking to run a pilot where we will not use bailiffs where there's debt, and we'll try to intervene earlier with people who've got debt with the council, be it for council tax or for other services, so that we can try and avoid using bailiffs and going and putting people into further debt because of the challenges that they're facing. In terms of tenancies, we've always maintained our view that they should be lifetime tenancies that council tenants have. It's the Tory government that are actually trying to remove those lifetime tenancies. We will continue to fight that.
Yep, thank you. No, I want to stop there with questions. It's nearly 9 o'clock. You've been very patient and we've had some very thorough questions. I'd just like now to give the panellists a minute each, just to sum up if there's any thoughts, comments, final issues that they want to raise with us. 1 minute each, and we'll start again with Peter. Time.
That's great. Thank you very much. First of all, great to hear from Gregory about Southall Town Hall. I wanted to move my barrister's practice there. I couldn't because of all the sale going through and everything. Unfortunately, Gregory doesn't know it, so I think I'm in his ward at the Hanger Lane. I would love to come here. In relation to housing, there was good points there. They use the word affordable. It needs to be social housing, and it needs to be, it can't be in the hands of private developers and housing associations. It has to come back to the people who really care. You know, I've actually got a track record in Southall of successfully stopping an awful housing association development that looked like something out of Ceausescu's Romania, for those who've got good developers. The Labour Council at the time were going to nod it all through, and it was only because of a couple of dissenting Labour councillors that we got it stopped. The Housing Association went to appeal, we won the appeal, so there's clearly things wrong in the planning department. Thank you.
That's it, you want
Thank you.
Gary? Thank you. There seems to be a clear disconnect of what people want and the council not necessarily listening to those people, and it isn't just in Southall. My party as someone a number of years ago, we took lots of viewpoints from people who were vulnerable, and they obviously were the priority. And so over the past 4 years, my party have challenged a number of decisions that the council were doing where they were making lives worse for those who were most vulnerable, those who were less able to fight up and stick up for themselves. And on one of those, the council did make a U-turn. There was a benefit that you were due to receive, and the council cut 10% of that, so you got 90% of it. After 2 years of campaigning, it was very good that the council then did a U-turn. Those people don't get that money back that they lost before, but that was threats, evictions, and there could have been homelessness in a lot of cases. So I would say in the election, if you want to sort of vote for those people who are going to protect those who are vulnerable, you should vote Lib Dem.
Thank you. Jeremy?
The Green Party want to give power back to the people because it is your neighbourhoods. That might mean forming parish councils, might mean formulating neighbourhood plans, might mean setting up referendums, because sometimes they are a good thing, on demolitions. This is something that Sean Berry has discussed with Sadiq Khan recently. He said he was going to give people, the residents, a say through referendums on demolitions. Then he quietly let 34 London estates bypass that regulation. So, is that trustworthy? But we want to put in a political system that puts people first. So if you want that system, then make one of your votes a Green vote.
Thank you, very concise. Gregory.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank everyone who's come again. I know we had a bit of a back and forth, but it's been really, really interesting. And I know I made a pledge that I'd come back if I was leader. I'll make another pledge. I'll come back even if I'm not leader. I'm willing to come back and talk to everyone. I think it's really, really important. I know, for you, I'm going to say. I think it's been really interesting this evening how little Julian Bell and the Labour Party have wanted to defend its record. You know, on the things that he wants to talk a lot about Brexit, which he has no control over, but on the things that he does have control over, sweeping the streets and affordable housing, which are two of their pledges, they've had 8 years to get that right. In this election, if you actually want someone to do something about those things, if you want those streets swept, if you want the potholes filled in, if you don't want that overdevelopment, then you need to vote for the Conservative Party. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gregory. Julian, and we're really looking at this carefully.
I've got my dodgy timing as well. Let me just say that our priority is to look after the vulnerable. So that's why we're putting £29 million into our children's and adults' social care services this next year. And let me just finish with an example of one of the things I'm most proudest of in terms of our record in the last term. And that's what we've done with the vulnerable children that were in the Calais camp. Okay? I went there and visited and saw the atrocious conditions that those children were living in. The Tory government didn't want to let any of them in, and they fought us every step of the way. We pledged to take 10 of those children, and we took 15 in the end. And I'm really proud of the fact that those children have got a brand new start in life with foster carers in the London Borough of Ealing.
Immaculate, 57 seconds. That's wonderful. It's been a bit rushed, my apologies, but can I thank the audience for your patience? It's been a long session listening, but also thinking of questions. Can I pay special thanks to our panellists, Peter Ward. Please join in the applause. Gary Malcolm, Jeremy Parker, Gregory Stafford, and Julian Bell. And even if your abiding memory of tonight is Gregory's pledge to run in his underpants, at least we will have learned something. So again, thank you very much and a safe journey home.